What if Shmi appeared on Mustafar? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. Obi-Wan's lightsaber hums as Anakin lies broken and burning. The duel is over. Darth Vader is born. But then, Ani, both Jedi freeze. That voice. Impossible. She's been dead for years. Standing at the edge of the platform, glowing with ethereal light, is Shmi Skywalker, Anakin's mother, the woman whose death started his fall to darkness. This single moment, this one impossible appearance, is about to rewrite the entire Star Wars saga. No Empire, no Death Star, no Luke hiding on Tatooine. Because what happens when a mother's love transcends death itself? The volcanic hellscape of Mustafar has just witnessed the most important duel in galactic history. Behind him lies a scene of unprecedented brutality. The conference room, where the separatist leaders had gathered for their final meeting, has been transformed into a charnel house. Newt Gunray's mechanical limbs twitch in their death throes, sparks flying from severed circuits. Poggle the Lesser's insectoid form is cleaved nearly in half, green ichor pooling beneath his chitinous shell. Wat Tambor's elongated skull bears the distinctive burn mark of a lightsaber thrust, his vocabulator crackling with distorted static as his life systems fail. But it is not just the leaders who have fallen. Throughout the facility, battle droids lie in twisted heaps, their metal bodies no match for the fury of a Sith Lord unleashed. Clone troopers who tried to intervene were cut down without mercy, their loyalty to the Republic meaning nothing in the face of Anakin's absolute commitment to his new path. Even the facility's workers, simple beings who had the misfortune to witness his rampage, were shown no quarter. In Anakin's mind, they were all complicit in a war that had cost too much, taken too many lives, destroyed too much of what he held dear. The crimson blade of his lightsaber hums softly at his side, its glow casting dancing shadows on the walls as he moves through the facility's main corridor. Every surface reflects the hellish light of his weapon. And in those reflections, Anakin sees not the face of the hero he once was, but something far darker. His eyes, once blue as the twin suns of Tatooine, now burn with the sulphurous yellow of the dark side. His skin has grown pale and drawn, as if the very act of embracing his hatred has begun to consume him from within. The transformation began years ago, in a moisture farm's humble kitchen, when he told his mother about his dreams of returning to free her and all the slaves of the Outer Rim. It accelerated in a Tusken Raider camp, where he knelt beside his mother's broken body and felt something fundamental break inside his soul. It reached its crescendo in the Chancellor's office, when he knelt before Darth Sidious and accepted the name that would define his future: Darth Vader. Now, standing in the aftermath of his latest atrocity, Anakin reflects on the path that brought him here. Every choice, every moment of anger, every compromise with his principles had led inexorably to this volcanic world where he had become something unrecognizable even to himself. The boy who once dreamed of ending slavery had become the enforcer for the greatest tyrant the galaxy had ever known. Yet even now, even steeped in the dark side as he is, Anakin tells himself that it was all necessary. Every life he had taken, every friend he had betrayed, every principle he had abandoned, it was all in service of a greater good. He had gained the power to save the one person who mattered most to him, the woman whose love had given meaning to his existence. Senator Padme Amidala would live. Their child would be born safely, and together they would rule a galaxy, finally brought to peace through strength. The Jedi, with their rigid codes and blind adherence to a republic that had grown corrupt and ineffective, would never have understood. They had failed his mother, leaving her to die in slavery while they pursued their grand philosophy of detachment. They had failed the galaxy, allowing a war to rage for 3 years while they served as generals in an army they should never have led. Most crucially, they had failed him, denying him the training and support he needed to save those he loved. But Darth Sidious understood. The Emperor had shown him truths that the Jedi refused to acknowledge, had given him the power to act instead of merely reacting to events. Through the dark side, Anakin had finally gained the strength to reshape the galaxy according to his will, to create a universe where the innocent would be protected and the guilty would face justice without the interference of corrupt politicians or naive idealists. As he reaches the main observation deck, Anakin pauses to gaze out at the hellscape. Beyond the transparisteel windows, rivers of molten rock flow like blood through channels carved into the planet's surface, and the very air shimmers with heat that would kill most beings in seconds. Massive collection arms reach into the lava flows, harvesting the minerals that make Mustafar so valuable to the galaxy's industrial powers. It is a world of fire and metal, of beauty and terror combined, and it suits Anakin's current mood perfectly. The facility's main computer terminal chimes softly, displaying a message from Coruscant. His master's voice fills the chamber, distorted slightly by the distance and the volcanic interference. Lord Vader, you have done well. The Separatist leadership has been eliminated, and their remaining forces will surrender within hours. Return to Coruscant immediately. There is much work to be done. Anakin considers the message for a moment before deleting it without responding. Soon, he tells himself, but not yet. There is something he must do first, a conversation he has been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. He can sense her approach through the Force, her familiar presence cutting through the dark side energies that swirl around Mustafar like a beacon of light in an ocean of shadow. Outside the facility, the sound of ship engines grows louder, cutting through the volcanic winds and the rumble of machinery. A sleek Naboo starship, its chrome surface reflecting the orange glow of the lava flows, settles onto the main landing platform with practiced precision. Anakin watches from the observation deck as the ship's systems power down, and he feels a complex mix of emotions surge through him. Love, certainly, but also anger, fear, and a deep sense of betrayal that he cannot entirely suppress. The ship's ramp descends with a soft hydraulic hiss, and Padme Amidala emerges into the hellish atmosphere of Mustafar. Even at this distance, Anakin can see the exhaustion etched into her features, the way her normally perfect senatorial composure has cracked under the strain of recent events. She wears simple traveling clothes instead of her usual elaborate gowns, and her hair hangs loose around her shoulders, giving her an air of vulnerability that makes Anakin's heart clench with protective instincts. But there is something else in her bearing, something that sends a chill through Anakin despite the volcanic heat. Fear. She is afraid of him, afraid of what he has become, and that knowledge cuts deeper than any lightsaber wound. For years, she had been his anchor to the light, the reminder that there was still good in the galaxy worth fighting for. Now, as she steps onto the platform and looks up at the facility's tower where she surely knows he waits, he can feel her terror through their bond. Anakin turns away from the window and strides toward the turbolift, his black robes billowing behind him. The facility's corridors blur past as he makes his way to the landing platform, his enhanced senses cataloging every detail of his surroundings. The heat signatures of the few remaining droids, the structural stress points in the metal beams, the chemical composition of the air itself, all of it feeds into the tactical awareness that the dark side has granted him. When the turbolift doors open onto the platform, Anakin steps out into the superheated air of Mustafar's surface. The temperature would be unbearable for most beings, but his force-enhanced physiology allows him to ignore the discomfort as he walks toward the woman he loves more than life itself. The platform trembles slightly under his feet, whether from the volcanic activity below or the weight of destiny, he cannot say. Padme stands near her ship, her hand resting protectively over the slight curve of her belly where their child grows. When she sees him approaching, her face goes through a rapid series of emotions: hope, fear, love, and finally, a deep sadness that seems to age her years in the span of seconds. She has heard the reports from Coruscant, knows what happened at the Jedi Temple, and now she sees the confirmation of her worst fears in the yellow glow of his eyes. "Anakin," she calls out, her voice barely audible over the volcanic winds. Despite her fear, despite everything she has learned, she runs toward him, her senatorial dignity forgotten in the face of her desperate need to reach the man she fell in love with all those years ago on Naboo. He catches her in his arms, and for a moment, the years fall away. They are no longer a Sith Lord and a senator, but simply Annie and Padme, two young people who found love in the midst of galactic chaos. Her scent, familiar and comforting, cuts through the sulfurous atmosphere of Mustafar, and Anakin buries his face in her hair, breathing deeply of her presence. "You came," he murmurs, his voice rough with emotion. "I knew you would. I felt you through the Force, even from halfway across the galaxy." "I had to," Padme whispers back, her hands coming up to frame his face. Her touch is gentle, loving, but he can feel the tremor in her fingers, the way she flinches slightly when she looks into his eyes. "Obi-Wan told me things, terrible things. I had to hear the truth from you." Anakin's expression hardens at the mention of his former master, and he pulls back slightly from Padme's embrace. The anger that is never far from the surface begins to bubble up again, fueled by what he sees as yet another betrayal by someone he once trusted. "What did he tell you?" Anakin asks, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "What lies did he fill your head with?" "He said you killed younglings," Padme says, her voice breaking on the words. "Children, Anakin. He said you led the clones into the temple and slaughtered everyone you found there. Masters, knights, Padawans, even the little ones who couldn't possibly have threatened anyone." For a long moment, Anakin says nothing. The wind howls around them, carrying with it the smell of molten rock and industrial chemicals. And somewhere in the distance, a collection arm groans under the stress of harvesting operations. When he finally speaks, his voice is calm, controlled, but underneath Padme can hear the fury that threatens to break free. They were not children, he says slowly, each word carefully measured. They were future Jedi, future servants of a corrupt order that had lost its way. Left alive, they would have grown up to perpetuate the same mistakes, the same blindness that has plagued the galaxy for 1,000 generations. Padme stares at him in horror, her hands falling away from his face as if she has been burned. Listen to yourself, Anakin. Listen to what you're saying. They were babies, some of them barely able to walk. And you're talking about them like they were enemy combatants. The Jedi made them enemy combatants the moment they took them from their families. Anakin replies, his voice rising with passion. Do you think I enjoyed what I did? Do you think it was easy for me to do what was necessary? But someone had to make the hard choices. Someone had to act while the Republic tore itself apart. He begins to pace back and forth on the platform, his movements sharp and agitated. The dark side energy radiating from him makes the air itself seem to thicken, and Padme has to fight not to step backward in fear. For 3 years, I watched good men die, while politicians argued and the Jedi pontificated about the will of the Force. Anakin continues, his words tumbling over each other in his haste to make her understand. I saw systems burn while the Senate debated trade routes and taxation policies. I watched the Republic, that we both love, slowly strangle itself with bureaucracy and corruption. And through it all, the Jedi did nothing but follow orders like good little soldiers. So you decided to become judge, jury, and executioner for the entire galaxy? Padme asks, her voice heavy with disbelief. Anakin, what you've done, it's not justice. It's genocide. It's progress. Anakin snaps back, whirling to face her with his eyes blazing. For the first time in my life, I have the power to actually change things instead of just reacting to them. The Emperor has shown me what the galaxy can become. Unified, peaceful, strong enough to protect itself from any threat. The Emperor, Padme repeats, and there is something in her voice that makes Anakin pause. You mean Palpatine? You mean the man who has been manipulating this war from the very beginning, who played both sides against each other for his own gain? He brought order to chaos, Anakin says, but there is less conviction in his voice now. He ended the war. He started the war, Padme explodes, her fear finally giving way to anger. He created the crisis that gave him emergency powers. He orchestrated the conflict that killed millions of innocent beings. And now you're helping him consolidate his control over everything we once fought to protect. Before Anakin can respond, another voice cuts through their argument like a blade through silk. I had hoped I would not find you here. Both of them turn to see Obi-Wan Kenobi emerging from Padme's ship, his brown Jedi robes fluttering in the volcanic wind. His weathered face is set in lines of deep sadness, and his hand rests casually on his lightsaber hilt in a gesture that is both non-threatening and unmistakably ready for violence. You, Anakin breathes, and the single word carries enough venom to poison a dozen systems. You turned her against me. You have done that yourself. Obi-Wan replies calmly, his blue eyes never leaving Anakin's face. I merely told her the truth about what happened at the temple. Your truth. Anakin snarls, his lightsaber flying to his hand with a thought. The crimson blade ignites with a snap hiss that echoes across the platform, and immediately the temperature seems to rise another few degrees. The Jedi's truth. Another set of lies designed to maintain your power over the galaxy. Obi-Wan's own lightsaber activates in response. Its blue glow, a stark contrast to the hellish reds and oranges of their surroundings. "I will not fight you, Anakin, but I will not let you hurt her." "Hurt her?" Anakin laughs, a sound devoid of any warmth or humor. "Everything I've done has been to protect her." The visions. Obi-Wan, "I've seen her die in childbirth. Seen our child grow up without a mother because I wasn't strong enough to save her. But the dark side has given me the power to change that fate." "The dark side has given you nothing but lies," Obi-Wan says, taking a step closer. "It promises power, but delivers only slavery to your basest emotions. You have become the very thing you once swore to destroy." "I have become powerful enough to save the people I love," Anakin roars, raising his lightsaber threateningly. "Something the Jedi could never teach me to do." "You're going down a path I cannot follow," Padme interjects, her voice thick with tears. "Please, Anakin, I'm begging you. Stop this madness before it's too late." For a moment, Anakin's expression softens as he looks at her, and Obi-Wan dares to hope that some part of his former Padawan might still be reachable. But then Anakin's face hardens again, and when he speaks, his voice is colder than the void between stars. "If you're not with me, then you're against me," he says, extending his free hand toward Padme. Invisible fingers close around her throat, and she gasps in shock and pain as her feet leave the ground. "Let her go," Obi-Wan shouts, rushing forward with his lightsaber raised. "This is not who you are." "This is exactly who I am," Anakin replies, his attention focused entirely on the woman struggling in his Force grip. "I am the man who will do whatever it takes to protect what matters most to me, even if it means protecting you from yourself." The dark side energy pouring off him is intoxicating in its intensity, feeding his anger and his sense of righteousness in equal measure. Every slight, every betrayal, every moment of pain he has endured throughout his life crystallizes into a single burning need to make someone, anyone, pay for the injustices he has suffered. If Padme cannot see that he has done all of this for her, then perhaps she needs to be taught the consequences of defying him. But even as he tightens his grip on her throat, even as he watches her face begin to turn blue from lack of oxygen, something deep inside Anakin rebels against what he is doing. This is Padme, the woman who saw past his status as a slave to the person he could become. This is the angel who brought light into his darkest hours, who stood by him even when the rest of the galaxy seemed determined to tear him down. This is the mother of his unborn child, the future he has sacrificed everything to protect. With visible effort, Anakin releases his hold on her, and Padme collapses to the platform, gasping for breath. Obi-Wan immediately moves to her side, checking her condition while keeping one eye on his former apprentice. "You have changed, Anakin," Obi-Wan says sadly. "The good man who was my friend is truly dead." "Your friend was weak," Anakin replies, but there is something hollow in his voice now. He was a slave to emotions he couldn't control, to a code that demanded he watch the people he loved suffer while he did nothing. "I am stronger now. I am free." "Free?" Obi-Wan asks, helping Padme to her feet. You kneel before a Sith Lord. You murder children in the name of peace. You attack the woman you claim to love. If this is freedom, then I choose slavery. With that, Obi-Wan ignites his lightsaber fully and moves into a defensive stance. The time for words has passed. Now there is only the ancient dance of light and shadow, master and student, hope and despair. I should have known the Jedi were plotting to take over. Anakin says, his own blade coming up to match his former master's stance. Evil is a point of view, Obi-Wan. From my perspective, the Jedi are the villains. Then you are lost, Obi-Wan replies, and launches himself forward in the opening move of what he knows will be his greatest and most terrible battle. Their lightsabers meet with a crash that sends sparks flying across the platform. For years, they have sparred together, master teaching student, friend supporting friend, through the trials of war and peace. Now that same intimacy works against them as each knows the other's style perfectly, can anticipate attacks and defenses with uncanny accuracy. Anakin fights with the fury of the dark side, his attacks powered by rage and desperation in equal measure. Every strike is meant to kill, every combination designed to overwhelm his opponent through sheer aggression. But Obi-Wan has not survived 3 years of galactic war by chance. His mastery of Soresu, the defensive form of lightsaber combat, allows him to weather the storm of Anakin's assault while looking for openings to counterattack. They battle across the platform, their duel carrying them away from the landing pad and onto the collection arms that extend over the lava flows. The metal structures groan under their weight and the fury of their combat. But neither combatant pays attention to anything beyond the need to defeat his opponent. I have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire, Anakin declares, as their blades lock together in a contest of strength. Your new empire, Obi-Wan gasps, pushing back against his former student's superior physical power. Don't make me kill you, Anakin warns. But even as he says the words, he knows they are a lie. He wants to kill Obi-Wan, wants to silence forever the voice of his conscience, the reminder of who he used to be. I will do what I must, Obi-Wan replies, breaking the lock and spinning away from Anakin's follow-up attack. Their duel carries them onto a mining platform that floats on the surface of the lava river. And there, the true intensity of their conflict is revealed. This is not merely a fight between two warriors. It is a battle between competing philosophies, between order and chaos, between the light and dark sides of the Force itself. Anakin leaps from platform to platform with inhuman grace, his attacks coming from unexpected angles as he tries to use the terrain to his advantage. Obi-Wan responds with the patience and precision that have always been his greatest strengths, turning Anakin's aggression against him while maintaining the defensive posture that has saved his life countless times before. As they fight, memories flash through both their minds. Happier times when they stood side by side against common enemies, quiet moments of friendship between missions, the pride Obi-Wan felt watching his Padawan grow into a powerful Jedi Knight. All of that history, all those bonds of affection and respect, now serves only to make their current conflict more bitter and painful. I have failed you, Anakin, Obi-Wan calls out as he deflects a particularly vicious attack. I have failed you. I should have known the Jedi were plotting to take over. Anakin replies, his voice hoarse with exertion and emotion. From my point of view, the Jedi are evil. Their battle reaches its climax as they leap onto a collection arm that extends directly over the main lava flow. The heat here is almost unbearable, and the metal beneath their feet glows cherry red from the thermal radiation. Any normal being would have collapsed from heat exhaustion within seconds, but they are sustained by their connection to the Force and their absolute commitment to their respective causes. It is here, in this hellish arena, that the crucial moment arrives. Anakin gathers himself for what he believes will be the killing blow, channeling all his rage and hatred into a single devastating attack. He leaps high into the air, his lightsaber raised above his head, ready to split his former master in half, from crown to pelvis. But Obi-Wan is ready for him. The older Jedi has been maneuvering throughout their entire fight, guiding Anakin's movements subtly, positioning him for this exact moment. As his former Padawan descends from his dramatic leap, Obi-Wan's blade comes up in a perfect arc that severs both of Anakin's legs at the knees and his remaining arm at the elbow. Anakin hits the ground hard, his lightsaber spinning away into the lava flow, where it disappears with a brief flare of light. He tries to push himself up with his remaining arm, but the pain and shock of his injuries overwhelm even his Force-enhanced endurance. For the first time since embracing the dark side, Anakin Skywalker is truly helpless. "You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them," Obi-Wan cries out, his voice breaking with anguish. "You were supposed to bring balance to the Force." But even as the words leave his lips, something changes in the air around them. The volcanic winds that have been howling across Mustafar's surface suddenly die to a whisper, and the oppressive heat seems to lessen fractionally. Both Jedi feel it at the same moment. A presence in the Force, unlike anything they have ever encountered before. The presence is gentle yet infinitely strong, warm despite the hellish environment, and filled with a love so pure and unconditional that it cuts through the dark side energies swirling around them like sunlight through storm clouds. Obi-Wan lowers his lightsaber, his eyes wide with wonder and confusion, while Anakin struggles to lift his head from where he lies, broken on the collection arm. "Ani." The voice comes from everywhere and nowhere, carried on currents of force, energy that seem to emanate from the very fabric of reality itself. It is a woman's voice, soft and caring, with the slight accent of the Outer Rim territories. Both Jedi recognize it immediately, though for different reasons, and with vastly different emotions. Standing at the edge of the collection arm, as if she has simply stepped out of thin air, is Shmi Skywalker. She appears exactly as she did in life, but transformed by death into something greater than she ever was as a living being. Her simple slave's clothing has been replaced by robes of pure white that seem to generate their own light, and her face bears the serene expression of one who has found peace beyond all understanding. "Mom?" Anakin whispers, his voice cracking like that of the 9-year-old boy who left her behind on Tatooine all those years ago. Shmi approaches slowly, her footsteps making no sound on the metal decking. As she draws closer, the dark side energies that have been corrupting Anakin's spirit begin to weaken, driven back by the sheer force of her love and compassion. "Look at what you have become, my son," she says sadly, kneeling beside his broken form. Though she is a spirit, her hand feels warm and real as she touches his face, and Anakin leans into that touch like a drowning man grasping for a lifeline. "You're dead," he says, tears streaming down his cheeks and hissing as they hit the superheated metal. The Tusken Raiders killed you. I buried you with my own hands. Yes, they did. Shmi acknowledges simply. And you killed them all in return. Not just the men, but the women and children too. You slaughtered an entire village because of your pain, your anger, your inability to accept that some things are beyond our control. Anakin tries to turn away from her gaze, but finds himself unable to do so. There is something in her eyes that demands honesty, that strips away all the rationalizations and self-deceptions he has used to justify his actions over the years. They deserved it, he says. But even as the words leave his lips, he knows how hollow they sound. Did they? Shmi asks gently. Did the children deserve to die for the crimes of their elders? Did the women deserve to be butchered for belonging to a tribe that took me captive? You were in pain, Ani. I understand that. But pain does not justify cruelty, and anger does not excuse atrocity. I had to, Anakin cries out, his voice echoing across the volcanic landscape. You were everything to me, the only person who ever truly loved me, and they took you away. They tortured you, broke you, left you to die in agony while I raced across the galaxy trying to save you. How could I not make them pay? Because that is not who I raised you to be. Shmi replies firmly. I taught you to be kind, to be compassionate, to use your gifts to help others rather than to harm them. The boy I knew would have grieved for me, yes, but he would not have let that grief turn him into a monster. As she speaks, images begin to flash through Anakin's mind. Memories of his childhood that he has not thought about in years, suppressed by the trauma and pain of his fall to darkness. He sees himself as a young boy of 7, working in Watto's junk shop during the scorching heat of Tatooine's twin suns, using his Force abilities not for personal gain, but to help the other slaves when their masters weren't watching. He remembers little Kitster crying because his mother couldn't afford medicine for her cough, and how young Anakin had secretly fixed several broken moisture vaporators in exchange for the credits needed to buy her treatment. The memories flow faster now, each one a testament to the compassion that once defined him. He sees himself sharing his meager food rations with families who had even less than he did, giving away his own portions even when his stomach cramped with hunger. He remembers fixing broken equipment for neighbors who couldn't afford to pay for repairs, staying up long into the night by candlelight to ensure that Granny Senna's heating unit would work through the cold desert night, or that young Padme's friend, Seek, could have her favorite toy speeder working again. There was the time he spent 3 days building a protocol droid to help old Ben Lars communicate with the Jawas who were cheating him in trades, never asking for anything in return. The way he would sneak extra food to the pregnant Twi'lek slave 2 buildings over, knowing she was eating for 2, but only being fed for 1. How he had risked a beating from Watto to defend a Rhodian child who was being bullied by older human kids, standing up for those who couldn't defend themselves, even when it meant he would suffer for it. I remember building C-3PO, Anakin whispers, his voice thick with emotion. Not because I wanted a servant, but because you worked so hard, so many hours, and I thought maybe a protocol droid could help translate for you, make your job easier. I wanted to take care of you the way you took care of me. And you did, my sweet boy, Shmi says, her voice glowing with pride. Every day, you found new ways to help people, to use your gifts for others. Do you remember the pod race? The memory hits him like a physical blow. Not the glory of victory or the thrill of speed, but the reason he had agreed to race in the first place. Qui-Gon had needed the parts to repair their ship, yes. But Anakin's real motivation had been different. He had seen how worried his mother was about their future, how she feared that their owner might sell one or both of them to settle debts. The race represented a chance not just for freedom, but for his mother's safety and happiness. "I wanted to win your freedom too," he says, the words coming out as a sob. "I thought if I could just be fast enough, strong enough, clever enough, I could save you from everything. I could make sure you never had to suffer again." "Oh, Arnie," Shmi says, her ethereal hand stroking his scarred face with infinite tenderness. "You were 9 years old. The weight of the galaxy was never yours to carry. But even then, even as a child, your first thought was not for your own freedom, but for mine. That is the heart I raised, the soul that still lives within you." More memories surface. These ones from his time at the Jedi Temple. He remembers his early days as a Padawan, when the other younglings would whisper about his age, his unusual arrival, his lack of proper training. There had been one boy, Gareth, who had been particularly cruel, using his noble birth and years of Jedi education to make Anakin feel small and unwanted. But instead of striking back with anger, Anakin had responded with kindness, helping Gareth with his mechanical studies, sharing techniques he had learned in the junkyards of Tatooine. He remembers the time he had risked his own advancement to cover for a fellow Padawan who had broken the rules to help refugees from the Trade Federation conflict. How he had spent countless hours in the temple's infirmary, using his Force sensitivity to ease the pain of injured Jedi returning from missions. The way he had befriended the temple's maintenance staff, learning their names, asking about their families, treating them with the same respect he showed the Masters. Even as a Jedi, even when you were struggling with their rules and restrictions, you still found ways to help. Shmi continues. You redesigned their training remotes to be less harmful to younger students. You created new meditation techniques that helped anxious Padawans find peace. You never stopped looking for ways to make life better for those around you. But it wasn't enough, Anakin protests, his voice breaking. I couldn't save you. I couldn't protect Padme from my own visions. I couldn't prevent the war that killed millions. Every time I tried to help, I just made things worse. Did you? Shmi asks gently. Or did you simply discover that the power to control everything, to prevent all suffering, was never yours to begin with? Think, my son. Remember, not just your failures, but your successes. How many lives did you save during the war? How many worlds did you protect? How many people are alive today because Anakin Skywalker chose to stand between them and harm? The memories come flooding back, pushed to the surface by his mother's prompting. Christophsis, where he had saved thousands of civilians trapped in the war zone. Teth, where he had rescued a Hutt child, despite having every reason to hate the species that had enslaved his mother. Ryloth, where he had liberated an entire world from separatist occupation. Countless battles where he had put himself in harm's way to protect his men, his fellow Jedi, innocent bystanders, caught in the crossfire of galactic conflict. He remembers Ahsoka the young Togruta Padawan who had been assigned to him. His initial resistance to training her, his gradual realization that teaching her had made him a better person. The way she had looked up to him, trusted him, believed in him even when he doubted himself. How her faith had inspired him to be worthy of it, to live up to the ideals she saw in him. "She called me Sky Guy," Anakin says, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "Ahsoka. She thought I could do anything, be anything. And I let her down. I let everyone down. You made mistakes," Shmi acknowledges. "Terrible, tragic mistakes that caused immeasurable pain. But you also showed love, courage, and compassion in ways that touched countless lives. The darkness in you is real, Ani, but so is the light. They have always existed together, and the choice of which one to feed has always been yours to make." She pauses, her gaze shifting to encompass not just her son, but the hellish landscape around them. The broken bodies scattered across Mustafar's industrial complex. The woman lying unconscious on the distant landing pad. "Tell me about the visions," she says quietly. "The dreams that drove you to make the choice that brought you here." Anakin's face contorts with pain, and for a moment, Obi-Wan thinks he might refuse to answer. But then the words come pouring out, as if a dam has burst inside him. "I saw her dying," he whispers. "Padme, in childbirth. She would call out my name, reach for me, and I couldn't help her. I couldn't save her, just like I couldn't save you. The dreams came night after night, so vivid, so real. I could feel her life slipping away, could sense our child dying with her. I tried meditation, tried to convince myself they were just nightmares, but they felt like prophecies, like the Force was showing me the future so I could change it. And Palpatine offered you a way to do that," Shmi says, her voice heavy with sorrow. "He showed me the power of the dark side." Anakin nods. "Told me about Darth Plagueis the Wise, who could manipulate the midi-chlorians to create life, to prevent death. He said that together we could unlock that power, that I could become strong enough to save anyone I chose to save. All I had to do was embrace my anger, my fear, my passionate love for those I wanted to protect. But the visions never stopped," Shmi observes. "Even after you fell to the dark side, even after you gained all that power, you still saw her dying." Anakin's eyes widen as the truth of her words hits him. She's right. Throughout his rampage at the temple, during his massacre of the separatist leaders, even as he choked her on this very platform, the visions of Padme's death had continued to plague him. If anything, they had grown stronger, more vivid, more immediate. They were never prophecies, he realizes, his voice filled with growing horror. They were manifestations of my own fear. My terror of losing her was so strong that I kept creating the very outcome I was trying to prevent. The dark side feeds on fear, Shmi explains gently. It takes your deepest anxieties and amplifies them, makes them seem more real and immediate than they actually are. The more you tried to prevent Padme's death through darkness, the more likely you made it that she would die because of your actions. The full weight of Palpatine's manipulation becomes clear to Anakin in that moment. The Emperor had not simply taken advantage of his fears. He had actively cultivated them, fed them, used them as tools to drive him deeper into darkness. Every vision of Padme's death had been a seed planted by Sith sorcery, designed to make him more desperate, more willing to compromise his principles in exchange for power. "He played me," Anakin says, his voice flat with shock. "From the very beginning, from the first day we met, he was manipulating me. The friendship, the guidance, the fatherly advice, all of it was designed to make me dependent on him, to isolate me from the people who truly cared about me." "Yes," Shmi says sadly, "but recognizing his manipulation is only the first step, my son. The harder question is this: what will you do with that knowledge? Will you let your anger at being deceived drive you deeper into darkness? Or will you use it as motivation to reclaim the light that he tried so hard to extinguish?" Before Anakin can answer, the sound of approaching footsteps echoes across the collection arm. The Emperor's clone troopers have finished securing the area, and now they advance in formation, their weapons trained on the unlikely gathering. At their head walks Palpatine himself, his yellow eyes glowing with malevolent amusement as he takes in the scene before him. "How touching," the Emperor says, his voice dripping with mock sentiment. "A family reunion in the depths of hell itself. I must admit, Lord Vader, I did not anticipate this particular complication when I sent you to eliminate the Separatist leadership." "You knew," Anakin says, his voice heavy with accusation. "You knew she would appear. You've known about Force ghosts all along." "I have studied every aspect of the Force for over 60 years, Palpatine replies smoothly. "The ability of certain individuals to maintain consciousness after death is well documented in Sith lore, though it is typically limited to those with extensive training in the dark arts. That a simple slave woman could manifest with such clarity and power is unexpected." He pauses, his gaze focusing intently on Shmi's luminous form. "Tell me, Phantom, how do you maintain your cohesion? What technique allows you to project yourself so vividly into the physical realm?" "The knowledge could prove useful. You could not understand it if I spent 1,000 years explaining," Shmi replies calmly. "The power that sustains me comes from love. Selfless, unconditional love for my child, and for all the innocent lives that have been touched by his actions. Such love is as foreign to your nature as warmth is to the void between stars." Palpatine's laugh is like breaking glass. "Love? You speak of love as if it were some mystical force, some transcendent power that conquers all obstacles. But I have seen love, woman. I have watched it turn to jealousy, jealousy to anger, anger to hatred. Love is simply another emotion to be manipulated, another weakness to be exploited. Your precious son is proof of that." "Is he?" Shmi asks, turning to look at Anakin with infinite compassion in her eyes. "Look at him now, my lord. Look closely and tell me what you see." Palpatine follows her gaze, and for the first time, he truly focuses on his apprentice's appearance. What he sees sends a chill through him that has nothing to do with the volcanic environment. Anakin's eyes, which have burned with Sith yellow for months, are flickering between gold and blue, the dark side corruption warring with something else, something that threatens to burn it away entirely. "No," Palpatine whispers, extending his senses to probe his apprentice's emotional state. What he finds there horrifies him. Doubt, Yes, but not the kind he can exploit. This is the doubt that comes from clarity, from seeing truth after years of deception. Worse still, he senses something he had thought he had successfully purged from Anakin's spirit. Hope. This is impossible. The Emperor snarls, his composure finally cracking. The transformation to the dark side is irreversible. Once someone has embraced their hatred, fed on their anger, tasted the power that comes from dominating others, they cannot simply choose to return to the light. The neural pathways, the psychological conditioning, the fundamental alteration of one's connection to the Force, all of it is permanent. Nothing is permanent except the love that binds us, Shmi says simply. And that love is stronger than any conditioning, deeper than any psychological manipulation, more fundamental than any alteration you could devise. You think you understand the Force because you can bend it to your will, but you understand only its shadow. The true power of the Force lies not in domination but in connection, not in taking but in giving, not in fear but in hope. As she speaks, her form seems to grow brighter, more substantial, until she appears almost solid, despite her obviously spiritual nature. The light radiating from her pushes back the oppressive darkness of Mustafar, and, for a brief moment, the hellish landscape seems less like a monument to industrial brutality and more like a world that could potentially be redeemed. You want to know how I maintain my presence in this realm? Shmi continues, addressing Palpatine directly. It is because my love for my son transcends death itself. Every moment of joy I shared with him, every sacrifice I made for his happiness, every prayer I offered for his safety, all of it resonates through the Force, creating a bond that no power in the galaxy can sever. You could destroy my physical form, but you could never touch the love that connects us. She turns back to Anakin, her voice taking on the same gentle tone she had used when he was a child, seeking comfort after a nightmare. Do you remember the sandstorm, Ani? You were 8 years old, and the weather systems had gone haywire. The storm lasted for 3 days, and we were trapped in the slave quarters with barely enough water for one person, let alone two. Anakin nods slowly, the memory surfacing with crystal clarity. It had been one of the worst storms in Mos Espa's recorded history, the kind of natural disaster that could strip flesh from bone in minutes. The slave quarters had been poorly sealed, and sand had leaked through every crack and crevice, coating everything in a fine layer of grit. You wanted to give me your water ration, he remembers. I could see how thirsty you were, how your lips were cracking, but you kept insisting that I needed it more, because I was still growing. And what did you do? Shmi asks. I refused to take it, Anakin says, his voice growing stronger as the memory becomes more vivid. I told you that we were a team, that we would share everything equally or not at all. We split every drop of water, every grain of food, every breath of clean air we could find. And somehow, we made it through together. That is who you are, Anakin Skywalker, Shmi says firmly. Not the broken man who knelt before this monster, not the fallen Jedi who slaughtered innocents in his rage, but the boy who would rather die than let his mother suffer alone. That boy still lives inside you, buried beneath years of pain and manipulation, but alive nonetheless. The question is whether you're brave enough to let him out. Palpatine, who has been listening to this exchange with growing alarm, finally decides that he has heard enough. With a gesture, He signals to his clone troopers, and immediately, a dozen blaster rifles swing toward Anakin and Obi-Wan. Enough sentiment, the Emperor commands. Lord Vader, you will accompany me back to Coruscant immediately. Your injuries will be treated, your cybernetic replacements will be fitted, and your training in the deeper mysteries of the dark side will begin in earnest. As for you, Kenobi, your death has been long overdue, but before the clones can open fire, something extraordinary happens. Anakin, still broken and bleeding from his duel with Obi-Wan, somehow finds the strength to rise to his feet. His lightsaber, which had been lying forgotten on the metal decking, flies to his hand with a thought, and the crimson blade ignites with a sound like thunder. "No," he says, his voice carrying a conviction that has been absent since his fall to the dark side. "I won't let you hurt them. You cannot stop me, Lord Vader," Palpatine says coldly. "You are broken, defeated, dependent on my power to even survive. Without my medical facilities, you will die within the hour from blood loss and shock." "Maybe," Anakin agrees, "but I'd rather die as Anakin Skywalker than live as Darth Vader." The change in him is subtle but profound. The yellow corruption in his eyes continues to fade, replaced by the blue that had once marked him as one of the most promising Jedi of his generation. His stance, previously aggressive and predatory, shifts into the more defensive posture he had learned during his years of training with Obi-Wan. Most importantly, the rage that has fueled him for so long begins to transform into something else entirely. Not the cold anger of the dark side, but the righteous fury of someone who has finally remembered what he is fighting for. "This is your last chance, my apprentice," Palpatine warns, his own lightsaber sliding into his hand. "Abandon this foolishness and accept your destiny, or face the consequences of defying your master." "You were never my master," Anakin replies, his voice growing stronger with each word. "You were a parasite, feeding on my pain and fear to make yourself stronger. But I choose not to feed you anymore. I choose love over hate, hope over despair, light over darkness." As he speaks, his lightsaber begins to change. The crimson blade flickers, its color shifting and wavering as the Kyber crystal inside responds to its wielder's emotional transformation. Slowly, impossibly, the red fades to purple, then to blue, returning to the color it had borne during Anakin's years as a Jedi Knight. Palpatine's response is swift and vicious. Dark side lightning erupts from his fingertips, arcing across the collection arm with enough power to kill a dozen men. But instead of dodging or deflecting the attack, Anakin does something unexpected. He absorbs it, just as Shmi had done earlier, drawing the dark energy into himself and transforming it into something else entirely. "Impossible," Palpatine gasps, staggering backward as his own power is turned against him. "No one can simply absorb Force lightning without years of specialized training." "You're right," Anakin agrees, advancing steadily despite his injuries. "No one can do it alone. But I'm not alone anymore. I have my mother's love, Obi-Wan's friendship, Padme's faith in me. I have the strength that comes from connection, from belonging to something greater than myself." The battle that follows is unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Palpatine, despite his incredible power and decades of experience, finds himself slowly but steadily pushed back by an opponent who should, by all rights, be easy to defeat. Anakin's lightsaber work is masterful but not supernatural. His force abilities impressive but not overwhelming. What makes him truly dangerous is something that no amount of Sith training can counter. He is fighting not for himself but for others. Not from hatred but from love. Obi-Wan joins the battle, his blue blade weaving a complex pattern of defensive moves as he protects Anakin's blind spots and creates openings for counterattacks. But it is clear that this is Anakin's fight, his moment of redemption, and the older Jedi is content to play a supporting role in his former Padawan's return to the light. You think love makes you strong? Palpatine snarls as their lightsabers lock together in a contest of wills. Love is what destroyed you in the first place. Your love for your mother led you to slaughter the Tusken Raiders. Your love for this woman drove you to betray everything you once believed in. Love is the source of all your pain, all your weakness. You're right, Anakin says calmly, his blade steady despite the incredible force being applied against it. Love did lead me to make terrible choices, but it also led me to make good ones. Love motivated me to protect the innocent, to stand up for those who couldn't defend themselves, to sacrifice my own safety for the sake of others. The capacity for love, true, selfless love, is what separates us from monsters like you. With a sudden surge of strength, he breaks the lightsaber lock and spins away from Palpatine's follow-up attack. The Emperor, caught off balance by the unexpected maneuver, stumbles forward and leaves himself open for the briefest of moments. It is an opening that Anakin, even in his weakened state, does not waste. His blue blade takes Palpatine through the chest, piercing the black robes and finding the withered heart beneath. For a moment, the Emperor's eyes widen in shock and disbelief, as if he cannot quite comprehend that his carefully laid plans could be unraveling so completely. This is not how it was supposed to end, he gasps, dark side energy crackling around his body as his life force begins to ebb away. I was to be immortal, to rule the galaxy for 1,000 generations. The Sith were to have their revenge. The Sith died with you, Anakin says quietly, withdrawing his lightsaber and watching as the most powerful Dark Lord in galactic history collapses to the metal decking. And the galaxy will be free to heal from the wounds you inflicted upon it. Palpatine's death throes are neither dramatic nor particularly violent. The dark side energy that has sustained him for so many years simply dissipates, leaving behind nothing but the withered corpse of a very old, very evil man. His clone troopers, programmed to obey his commands without question, stand motionless for a moment as their central authority vanishes. Then, one by one, they begin to remove their helmets, blinking in confusion, as if waking from a long nightmare. General Skywalker, one of them asks, hesitantly, using Anakin's old Republic rank. Sir, we don't understand what happened. One moment we were following the Emperor's orders, and now it's like we're ourselves again. Anakin looks at the clones, men he had led into battle countless times, soldiers who had followed him through the fires of war, only to be turned against their Jedi commanders by Palpatine's manipulation, and feels a profound sadness for all the pain that has been inflicted on both sides. Order 66 is over, he says simply. The inhibitor chips that were controlling you are no longer active. You're free to make your own choices now. The implications of Palpatine's death are staggering and immediate. rippling across the galaxy like shockwaves from a massive explosion. On Coruscant, the Imperial command structure begins to collapse within minutes, as news of the Emperor's demise spreads through encrypted channels. Admiral Ozzel, commanding the superstar destroyer Executor in the Coruscant system, finds himself facing a mutiny as clone officers under his command suddenly regain their free will and refuse to carry out further Imperial directives. "Sir," Commander Appo reports, his voice shaking as he removes his helmet for the first time in months. The men are saying they can think clearly again. They're asking questions about Order 66, about what we did to the Jedi. They're demanding answers. Similar scenes play out across thousands of Star Destroyers, countless military bases, and innumerable Imperial installations throughout the galaxy. Clone troopers who have spent months operating under artificial compulsion suddenly find their minds cleared of the inhibitor chip programming that had turned them into unwilling executioners. The psychological trauma of realizing what they had been forced to do creates chaos in the ranks, but also opens the door for the surviving Jedi to emerge from hiding and begin the long process of healing and reconciliation. On Kashyyyk, Master Yoda feels the disturbance in the Force as Palpatine dies, a sudden lifting of the oppressive darkness that has shrouded the galaxy for months. The ancient Jedi Master, who has been living in exile among the Wookiees, immediately begins reaching out through the Force to contact other survivors, using techniques learned during his centuries of life to establish a network of communication that bypasses Imperial surveillance entirely. "Felt it? You have," he says to Tarful, the Wookiee chieftain who has been sheltering him. "Ended the Emperor's reign has. Begin to heal. The galaxy can." On Tatooine, Obi-Wan Kenobi, not the Obi-Wan currently fighting alongside Anakin on Mustafar, but his secret clone, created by Kamino technology as a fail-safe against the possibility of his death, suddenly stops his meditation in the cave where he has been hiding. The Force carries to him not just news of Palpatine's death, but something even more extraordinary: the return of Anakin Skywalker to the light side of the Force. "Impossible," he whispers to himself, then immediately begins preparations to leave Tatooine and rejoin the greater galactic community. If Anakin has truly been redeemed, then the future he and Yoda had planned for Luke Skywalker, a future built around the boy eventually confronting and possibly killing his own father, will need to be completely reconsidered. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the political ramifications of the Emperor's death create opportunities for both hope and chaos. On Naboo, Queen Apailana immediately declares the planet's independence from Imperial rule and begins reaching out to other worlds to form a new alliance of free systems. On Alderaan, Bail Organa mobilizes the planet's defense forces and begins coordinating with other rebel sympathizers to establish a provisional government that can serve as an alternative to Imperial rule. But not everyone welcomes the news of Palpatine's death with celebration. Grand Moff Tarkin, commanding the Death Star construction project above Geonosis, sees the Emperor's demise not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity. With Palpatine gone and Vader presumably dead or discredited, Tarkin begins making moves to position himself as the new leader of what remains of the Imperial military machine. "Gentlemen," he addresses his senior staff officers, "the Emperor's death creates a unique opportunity for those bold enough to seize it. The galaxy requires strong leadership to prevent it from descending into chaos. And I believe We are uniquely qualified to provide that leadership. Similar power grabs are occurring throughout imperial space as governors, admirals, and corporate executives who had chafed under Palpatine's autocratic rule suddenly find themselves free to pursue their own ambitions. The result is a rapidly fracturing political landscape that threatens to plunge the galaxy into a civil war even bloodier than the Clone Wars had been. But for now, in this moment, on this hellish world of fire and industrial machinery, there are more immediate concerns than galactic politics. Padme still lies unconscious on the landing platform, her life hanging by the slenderest of threads. The twins she carries are in mortal danger, and despite all the cosmic significance of what has just transpired, Anakin's first priority remains the same as it has always been: protecting the people he loves. "We need to get her to a medical facility immediately," Obi-Wan says, checking Padme's vital signs with growing concern. His field medical training, learned during years of warfare, tells him that she is going into premature labor, brought on by the stress and trauma of the day's events. She's hemorrhaging internally, and the babies are in distress. Without proper treatment within the next few hours, we could lose all three of them. Anakin nods grimly, gathering Padme's unconscious form in his arms with infinite care. Despite his own severe injuries, the severed limbs that continue to bleed, despite emergency cauterization, the burns from exposure to Mustafar's superheated atmosphere, the massive blood loss that should by all rights have killed him already. He seems to draw strength from somewhere deep within himself, some reservoir of determination that even his fall to the dark side could not entirely drain. "The nearest medical station is Polis Massa," he says, his voice steady despite the pain that must be coursing through his body. "But that's still several hours away. Even with the fastest ship we can commandeer, she might not survive the journey." "Then we make it survive," Obi-Wan replies grimly. But as they prepare to leave, Shmi's voice stops them. "Wait," she says, her ethereal form becoming more solid and substantial than it has been since her first appearance. The light radiating from her spirit seems to push back the oppressive darkness of Mustafar itself, and for a moment the hellish landscape appears almost peaceful. There is another way, a better way. Before either Jedi can ask what she means, Shmi extends her hands toward Padme's still form. Light begins to emanate from her fingertips. Not the harsh illumination of technology, but something softer, warmer, more fundamentally alive. It is the same kind of energy that powers the Force itself, but purified and concentrated through the lens of absolute love. As the light touches Padme, remarkable changes begin to occur. Her breathing, which had been shallow and labored, becomes deeper and more regular. The pallor in her skin fades, replaced by a healthy glow that speaks of returning vitality. Most remarkably, the internal bleeding that had threatened her life begins to slow and then stop entirely, as if her body is being healed from within by some power beyond medical understanding. "I don't understand," Anakin says, his voice filled with wonder and confusion in equal measure. "Force healing requires physical contact, precise knowledge of anatomy, years of specialized training. And you're dead." "Yes," Shmi says, with a gentle smile that carries all the warmth and love of their shared memories. "But love transcends even death, my son. And sometimes, when the need is great enough, when the love is pure enough, when the stakes are high enough, even the impossible becomes possible. The Force does not recognize the boundaries we place upon it. It flows where it is needed most, regardless of our limited understanding of its nature. Under Shmi's supernatural ministrations, Padme's condition continues to improve dramatically. The premature labor that had threatened the lives of her unborn children stops entirely, allowing them time to develop further before facing the trauma of birth. The stress-induced complications that had put her own life in danger fade away as if they had never existed. Slowly, gradually, she begins to regain consciousness, her eyelids fluttering, as awareness returns to her battered body. When her eyes finally open fully, the first thing she sees is Anakin's face, looking down at her with an expression of such pure love and relief that it takes her breath away. Gone are the yellow eyes of Sith corruption, replaced by the blue she remembers from their wedding day. Gone is the cold mask of Darth Vader, replaced by the warm, caring expression of the man she fell in love with on the shores of Naboo's mountain lakes. "Anakin," she whispers, her voice weak but filled with desperate hope. "Your eyes, they're blue again. You came back to me." "I found my way back," he says simply, brushing a strand of hair from her face with his remaining hand. The gesture is gentle, reverent, completely at odds with the man who had nearly killed her in his rage just hours before. "My mother helped me remember who I used to be, who I still am underneath everything that went wrong." Padme's gaze shifts to where Shmi stands watching over them, and her eyes widen with recognition and wonder. Though they never met in life, there is something unmistakably familiar about the older woman's features, something that speaks of shared love for the same man, of a mother's pride in her son and a wife's faith in her husband. "You're his mother," she says, her voice thick with emotion. "Shmi Skywalker. He told me so much about you, about how you raised him, about how much you loved him. Thank you for bringing him back to me. Thank you for giving us a chance to be a family." "The choice to return was always his," Shmi replies, her voice carrying the wisdom of one who has seen beyond the veil of death and glimpsed the true nature of existence. "I merely reminded him that love is always stronger than hatred, that hope can survive even the darkest night, that redemption is possible for anyone willing to seek it with a genuine heart. But the real work, the work of healing, of building a better future, of raising children who will know love instead of fear, that lies ahead of all of you." As if summoned by her words, the sound of ship engines begins to fill the air around them. But this time, it is not the dark shuttle of a Sith Lord come to collect his apprentice, nor the sterile transport of an emperor seeking to complete his domination of the galaxy. Instead, a small fleet of Republic vessels descends through Mustafar's chaotic atmosphere. Medical ships with Red Cross markings, rescue craft equipped with the latest emergency equipment, and even a few Jedi starfighters piloted by survivors of Order 66 who have sensed the dramatic shift in the Force and come to investigate its source. The lead medical ship, a converted Republic frigate called the Restoration, extends its docking tube to create a secure connection with Mustafar's landing platform. Teams of emergency medical personnel rush out, led by a Twi'lek doctor named Orna Kira, whose reputation for miracle saves has made her famous throughout the galaxy. "Senator Amidala," Dr. Kira says, immediately taking charge of the situation with the calm efficiency that marks all truly great healers. We received a distress signal indicating you were in critical condition. What's your status? Much better than we feared. Obi-Wan replies, helping to transfer Padme to a medical gurney. There was significant trauma, premature labor, internal bleeding, but he glances uncertainly at Shmi, unsure how to explain what they have just witnessed. But the crisis has passed. Padme says firmly, taking control of the narrative. I'm feeling much stronger now, and I think the babies are going to be fine. But I'd still like a full medical evaluation to be certain. As the medical team works to stabilize and transport their patients, one of the Jedi pilots approaches Obi-Wan with urgent news from across the galaxy. Master Shakti, one of the few council members to survive Order 66, has been coordinating with surviving Jedi throughout the galaxy to assess the scope of Palpatine's death and its implications. Master Kenobi, the pilot says, we've received reports from dozens of systems. The Emperor is confirmed dead. The inhibitor chip programming has been deactivated, galaxy-wide, and the Imperial command structure is collapsing. But we're also getting reports of warlords and regional governors attempting to carve out their own territories. The galaxy is fracturing, and we need every available Jedi to help maintain order during the transition. I understand the urgency, Obi-Wan replies, but my priority right now is ensuring the safety of Senator Amidala and her children. They've been through enough trauma for one day. Actually, Anakin interjects, his voice stronger than it has any right to be given his injuries. I think we need to address the larger situation as well. Palpatine's death is going to create a power vacuum, and if we don't move quickly to fill it with legitimate leadership, the galaxy could descend into chaos worse than anything we saw during the Clone Wars. The next few hours pass in a blur of controlled activity aboard the Restoration. Padme is subjected to a comprehensive medical evaluation that confirms what Shmi's healing had already accomplished. Both she and her unborn children are in excellent health, with no sign of the trauma that had threatened their lives just hours earlier. The medical team is baffled by her rapid recovery, but they accept it as one of those occasional miracles that make their profession worthwhile. Anakin's treatment is more complex and challenging. His severed limbs require immediate attention to prevent infection and further complications, while his other injuries demand specialized care that pushes even the Restoration's advanced medical facilities to their limits. But throughout the long hours of surgery and recovery, he remains conscious and alert, driven by a determination to be present for his family and to help deal with the crisis that is engulfing the galaxy. During his recovery, reports continue to pour in from across known space, painting a picture of rapid political change and growing instability. On Coruscant, the Imperial Senate has voted to dissolve the Empire and restore the Republic. But the transition is far from smooth. Many former Imperial officials are attempting to maintain their positions and privileges, while others are fleeing to the unknown regions with whatever wealth and resources they can carry. The situation is further complicated by the revelation of Palpatine's true nature and the extent of his manipulation of galactic events. The discovery that he had been playing both sides of the Clone Wars, that he had orchestrated the conflict that killed billions of beings for the sole purpose of gaining political power, creates a crisis of legitimacy that threatens to undermine trust in government itself. The people don't know who to trust anymore, reports Senator Mon Mothma during a holo conference with the surviving Republican leadership. Palpatine's deceptions ran so deep involved so many institutions that citizens throughout the galaxy are questioning everything they thought they knew about their government, their military, even their local officials. It is into this atmosphere of uncertainty and mistrust that Anakin and Padme emerge as unexpected symbols of hope and redemption. The story of Anakin's fall to the dark side and his return to the light, when it finally becomes public knowledge, resonates with beings throughout the galaxy who are struggling with their own complicity in the Empire's crimes. If Anakin Skywalker can find his way back from the darkness, writes a prominent journalist on Alderaan, then perhaps there is hope for all of us who made compromises with evil in order to survive. His redemption proves that no one is beyond saving, that even the worst mistakes can be overcome through genuine repentance and the courage to do better. The twins' birth, several weeks after the events on Mustafar, becomes a galaxy-wide celebration. Luke Skywalker enters the world first, his tiny lungs announcing his arrival with a healthy cry that seems to echo with promise for the future. His sister follows minutes later, quieter, but no less vital, her small fingers grasping reflexively at the air, as if reaching for the stars themselves. "They're perfect," Padme whispers as the medical droids place the twins in her arms for the first time. "Beautiful, and perfect, and safe. They're going to grow up in a free galaxy, Anakin. They'll never know the kind of fear and oppression that shaped our lives." Anakin, propped up in a hover chair beside her bed, reaches out with his newly fitted prosthetic hand to touch his son's tiny fingers. The mechanical limb, crafted by the finest technicians in the galaxy, responds to his neural impulses with perfect precision, but he knows it will never quite replace what he lost. Still, as Luke's fingers wrap around his artificial index finger with surprising strength, he feels a surge of pure joy that washes away any regret about his physical limitations. "Luke," he says softly, testing the name on his lips. "Luke Skywalker and Leia Neighbory Skywalker. I want them to carry both our heritages," Padme explains, her voice soft with exhaustion and happiness. "Your strength and my diplomatic skills, your connection to the Force and my understanding of politics, your courage and my compassion. They're going to need all of those qualities for what lies ahead." As they sit together in the medical bay, surrounded by the soft hum of life support systems and the gentle light of the recovery ward, Shmi appears one final time. Her form is even more translucent now, as if the effort of healing Padme and guiding Anakin back to the light has drained the last of her spiritual energy. "It is time for me to go," she says, her voice barely a whisper on the recycled air of the medical bay. "My purpose here is complete. You have everything you need now to build the life you were meant to have." "No," Anakin protests, reaching toward her with his good arm. "Please don't leave me again. I've made so many mistakes, done so many terrible things. I need your guidance to help me make amends, to learn how to be the father these children deserve. You don't need me anymore, Annie," Shmi says with infinite love and pride shining in her ethereal features. "You have everything you need right here. A wife who loves you unconditionally, children who will depend on you to show them the way, friends who will stand by you through whatever challenges lie ahead, and most importantly, the knowledge that redemption is always possible for those who seek it with genuine hearts." She moves closer to the bed where her son sits with his new family, and for a moment, Her ethereal form seems to solidify enough for her to place a gentle kiss on his forehead, then on the foreheads of each of the newborn twins. "Remember," she whispers, her voice already beginning to fade into the cosmic background of the Force itself. "The light is always there, waiting for you to choose it. And love, true, selfless, unconditional love, never dies. It only grows stronger, passing from generation to generation like an eternal flame that no darkness can ever extinguish." With those words, Shmi Skywalker fades away for the final time, leaving behind only the warmth of her blessing and the certainty that somewhere in the cosmic force that binds all things together, she continues to watch over her family with infinite love and pride. The months that follow are among the most challenging and rewarding of Anakin's life. The process of physical rehabilitation is grueling, requiring him to relearn basic motor functions with his prosthetic limbs and to adapt his lightsaber techniques to accommodate his changed physiology. But the emotional and spiritual healing proves even more difficult and more important. Working with a team of therapists, Force-sensitive healers, and former Jedi who have emerged from hiding throughout the galaxy, Anakin begins the long process of confronting the trauma that led to his fall and developing healthier ways of dealing with fear, anger, and loss. It is work that he approaches with the same intensity he once brought to his Jedi training, but now motivated by love rather than ambition, by the desire to heal rather than the hunger for power. The goal is not to forget what you've done or to pretend it never happened, explains Dr. Silgal, a Mon Calamari healer who specializes in treating Force-sensitive individuals suffering from dark side corruption. Instead, we want to help you integrate those experiences into a healthier sense of self, to learn from your mistakes without being defined by them, and to channel your natural intensity toward constructive rather than destructive purposes. The therapy is often painful, requiring Anakin to relive and examine some of the darkest moments of his life. But it is also liberating, allowing him to finally understand the patterns of thought and emotion that had made him vulnerable to Palpatine's manipulation. He learns to recognize the early warning signs of dark side temptation, to reach out for help when he feels overwhelmed by negative emotions, and to find strength in vulnerability rather than in isolation. Padme, meanwhile, throws herself into the political work of rebuilding the Republic and establishing a more just and democratic system of government. Drawing on her years of experience as a senator and her intimate knowledge of the corruption that had weakened the previous system, she becomes one of the leading voices in the Constitutional Convention that works to create a new framework for galactic governance. "We cannot simply restore the old Republic," she argues during one heated debate. "That system failed because it was too centralized, too bureaucratic, too divorced from the needs and concerns of ordinary citizens. We need something new, something that places power in the hands of local communities, while still maintaining enough central coordination to address galaxy-wide challenges." The Constitutional Convention, meeting on the neutral world of Chandrila, brings together representatives from hundreds of systems to hammer out the details of what will become known as the New Republic. The debates are often contentious, with former imperial loyalists, Republic traditionalists, and radical reformers all advocating for different visions of the future. But gradually, through patience and compromise, a new system of government begins to emerge. The twins, meanwhile, develop in an environment of love and security that stands in stark contrast to their father's traumatic childhood. Luke shows early signs of Force sensitivity, delighting in making small objects float through the air or sensing the emotions of those around him. His first word is fly, and he spends hours watching the sky from their home's observation deck, pointing excitedly at passing starships and cloud formations. Leia, while perhaps less overtly powerful in the Force, demonstrates an intelligence and strength of will that suggests she will one day be a formidable leader in her own right. Her first word is no, delivered with such emphatic conviction that it makes both parents laugh despite their exhaustion. She shows an early fascination with political discussions, sitting quietly in her hover crib during family meetings and seeming to follow the conversations with remarkable attention for someone so young. Both children grow up knowing the full truth about their father's past, though it is revealed to them gradually and age appropriately as they mature. Anakin and Padme make the difficult but important decision to be completely honest with them about the darkness he had embraced and the crimes he had committed, believing that the truth, however painful, is preferable to comfortable lies that might be discovered and misunderstood later. Daddy made some very bad choices when he was younger. Padme explains to 4-year-old Leia during one of their regular talks about family history. They are sitting in the garden of their home on Naboo, surrounded by the flowers and water features that Padme has cultivated over the years. He let his anger and fear control him instead of controlling them. And he did things that hurt a lot of people, including people who loved him. Like when I get angry and hit Luke, Leia asks, her young mind trying to process the complex concepts of guilt, redemption, and moral responsibility. Similar in some ways, but much more serious, Padme says carefully, choosing her words with the precision that has made her an effective politician. The important thing to understand is that we all have the power to choose who we want to be. Every single day of our lives, we can choose to be kind or cruel, helpful or harmful, loving or hateful, and no matter what mistakes we've made in the past, we can always choose to do better in the future. Is that why Daddy works so hard helping people now? Leia asks, displaying the perceptiveness that will one day make her a skilled diplomat and leader. Exactly, Padme confirms, pulling her daughter closer for a hug. He wants to make up for the bad things he did by doing as many good things as possible. It doesn't erase his mistakes, but it shows that he's learned from them and become a better person. It is a lesson that both children take to heart as they grow older, and it shapes their development in profound ways. Luke becomes known for his compassion and his willingness to see the good in everyone, even those who have done terrible things. He often says that if his father could change from bad to good, then anyone can. And he approaches even the most difficult people with patience and understanding. Leia, on the other hand, develops into a fierce advocate for justice, who never loses sight of the importance of mercy and forgiveness. She understands from an early age that true strength comes not from the ability to dominate others, but from the courage to admit when you're wrong and the determination to make things right. As the years pass, the family settles into a comfortable routine on Naboo, but they are far from isolated from the larger galaxy. Anakin becomes one of the most active members of the new Jedi Order, using his unique experiences and hard-won wisdom to help train a new generation of Force-sensitive individuals. His approach to teaching is radically different from the old Jedi methods, emphasizing emotional health and personal relationships rather than detachment and isolation. The old order failed because it taught us to suppress our emotions instead of understanding them. He explains to a class of young Padawans during one of his regular teaching sessions. They told us that attachment leads to the dark side, but they never taught us the difference between healthy attachment and possessive obsession. They warned us about the dangers of love, but they never showed us its power to heal and redeem. His reputation as a teacher spreads throughout the galaxy, and Force-sensitive individuals who have struggled with dark side temptation seek him out for guidance and support. Many of them are former Imperial officers or Sith cultists who are trying to find their way back to the light. And Anakin's own journey gives them hope that redemption is possible even for those who have done terrible things. One particularly memorable case involves a young woman named Mara Jade, who had been trained as one of Palpatine's secret assassins, an Emperor's hand tasked with eliminating threats to his rule. When the Emperor died, she found herself free but lost, struggling with programming that had conditioned her to see violence as the solution to every problem. "I don't know how to be anything other than a killer," she confesses during their first meeting. "It's all I've ever been good at, all I've ever been trained for." How do you rebuild a life when everything you know about yourself is based on causing pain to others? The same way everyone does. Anakin replies gently, "One choice at a time, one day at a time. You start by deciding who you want to be, and then you make choices that move you in that direction. It's not easy, and you'll make mistakes along the way, but it is possible. I'm living proof of that." The conversation marks the beginning of a long mentorship that eventually transforms Mara from an assassin into one of the New Republic's most effective peacekeepers. Her journey from darkness to light becomes another powerful symbol of the possibility of redemption, inspiring others to seek help rather than drowning in guilt and despair. Meanwhile, the political situation in the galaxy continues to evolve in ways both encouraging and concerning. The New Republic, while more democratic and responsive than its predecessor, struggles with the challenges of governing a diverse collection of species and cultures spread across millions of star systems. Regional conflicts continue to flare up. Criminal organizations fill power vacuums left by the Empire's collapse, and remnants of Imperial forces stage guerrilla campaigns from hidden bases in the unknown regions. It is during one of these crises when the planet Ryloth comes under attack from a resurgent separatist movement that Luke and Leia get their first real taste of the galaxy's ongoing struggles. Now 8 years old, they accompany their parents on a diplomatic mission intended to negotiate a peaceful resolution to the conflict. "Why are they fighting?" Luke asks, as their ship approaches Ryloth's war-torn surface. Below them, they can see the scars left by orbital bombardment, entire cities reduced to rubble by the violence that has consumed the planet for months. "Because they're afraid," Anakin explains, his voice heavy with the weight of experience. The people attacking believe that the New Republic will oppress them the way the Empire did, so they're fighting to prevent that from happening. The people defending believe that the attackers want to destroy everything they've worked to build, so they're fighting to protect it. Both sides think they're doing the right thing, but their fear is making them see enemies where there might be friends. "Can't you just tell them they're wrong?" Leia asks, with the straightforward logic of childhood. "It's not that simple, sweetheart," Padme says, sitting down beside her daughter to explain the complexities of interstellar politics. When people are scared and angry, they often don't want to listen to reason. Our job is to help them feel safe enough to stop fighting and start talking, but that requires patience and understanding, not just words. The mission to Ryloth proves to be a turning point for the entire family. Anakin's reputation as a redeemed Sith Lord gives him unique credibility with both sides of the conflict. The Separatist remnants see him as someone who understands their grievances against centralized authority, while the Republic loyalists respect his sacrifice in defeating the Emperor. His ability to speak to both groups in language they understand helps to broker a ceasefire that eventually leads to a lasting peace treaty. But more importantly, the mission shows Luke and Leia firsthand the kind of work their parents do and the difference it can make in people's lives. They meet refugee children who have lost their families to the fighting. They see communities working together to rebuild destroyed homes. And they witness the moment when former enemies embrace each other in reconciliation. "I want to do that," Luke declares on the flight home, his young face serious with newfound purpose. "I want to help people stop fighting and start being friends." "Me too," Leia agrees, but her approach is characteristically more direct. "But I want to change the laws so that people don't have reasons to fight in the first place. If everyone has enough food and safe places to live, maybe they won't be so scared all the time." Their parents exchange knowing looks, recognizing in their children the same drive to help others that had motivated their own life choices. But they also see something more, a wisdom that comes from growing up in a family that has experienced both the depths of darkness and the heights of redemption, an understanding that true strength lies not in power over others but in service to the common good. As the twins grow into adolescence, their paths begin to diverge in ways that reflect their individual personalities and interests. Luke becomes increasingly focused on his Force training, working with his father and other Jedi to develop abilities that he hopes to use in service of peace and healing. His natural empathy and strong connection to the living Force make him particularly gifted at sensing the emotions and motivations of others, a skill that proves invaluable in diplomatic situations. Leia, meanwhile, gravitates toward politics and law, following in her mother's footsteps by studying the intricacies of interstellar governance and the challenges of creating just policies for diverse populations. She interns with various New Republic agencies during school breaks, gaining practical experience in everything from refugee assistance programs to trade dispute resolution. Despite their different interests, the twins remain close, often working together on projects that benefit from both political acumen and Force sensitivity. They become known throughout the galaxy as the Hope Twins, symbols of a new generation that has grown up free from the fear and oppression that characterized their parents' youth. Their 14th birthday celebration, held at the family home on Naboo, becomes an impromptu gathering of some of the galaxy's most influential leaders. Former rebels and Imperial defectors, Jedi survivors, and Force-sensitive newcomers, politicians and diplomats from dozens of species, all come together to celebrate not just the twins' coming of age, but the remarkable transformation that their family represents. During the celebration, as guests mingle in the garden, where Padme once told a young senator from Naboo about the beauty of democracy, Anakin finds himself reflecting on the long journey that brought him to this moment. The scars of his time as Darth Vader will never fully heal. He still wakes sometimes from nightmares about the younglings he killed, still feels the weight of the billions who died because of his choices. But he has learned to live with that guilt while still finding joy in the present and hope for the future. Regrets? Padme asks, coming up behind him and slipping her arms around his waist, in a gesture that has become comfortably familiar over their years together. Many, he admits, leaning back into her embrace. But not about this. Not about us. Not about them. He nods toward where Luke and Leia are enthusiastically explaining some new idea to a group of fascinated adults. Everything I lost, everything I did wrong, everything I suffered. If it was the price for getting here, to this moment, then it was worth paying. As the evening progresses and the celebration continues around them, Anakin feels his mother's presence one last time. Not as a visible apparition, but as a gentle warmth in his heart. A sense of approval and pride that seems to emanate from the very fabric of the Force itself. He knows that Shmi is still watching over them, still guiding them in subtle ways, still proud of the man he has become and the legacy he is building for future generations. The galaxy still faces challenges, still struggles with the aftermath of decades of war and oppression. There are still those who choose darkness over light, hatred over love, fear over hope. But there is also proof that redemption is possible, that even the worst mistakes can be overcome, that love really can transcend death itself. And in a garden on Naboo, surrounded by friends and family, with his wife in his arms and his children planning to change the galaxy for the better, Anakin Skywalker finally finds the peace that had eluded him for so long. He is no longer the chosen one, burdened with impossible expectations and cosmic responsibility. He is simply a man who made terrible mistakes, learned from them, and chose to spend the rest of his life trying to make amends. It is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Before either Jedi can ask what she means, Shmi extends her hands toward Padmé's still form. Light begins to emanate from her fingertips, not the harsh illumination of technology, but something softer, warmer, more fundamentally alive. As the light touches Padmé, her breathing becomes steadier, her color improves, and the danger signs that had so worried Obi-Wan begin to fade. "I don't understand," Anakin says, his voice filled with wonder. "How are you doing this? Force healing requires physical contact and you're dead." "Yes," Shmi says with a gentle smile. "But love transcends even death, my son. And sometimes, when the need is great enough, when the love is pure enough, even the impossible becomes possible." Under Shmi's supernatural ministrations, Padmé's condition continues to improve. The premature labor stops, the stress on her body decreases, and slowly, gradually, she begins to regain consciousness. When her eyes finally flutter open, the first thing she sees is Anakin's face looking down at her with an expression of such pure love and relief that it takes her breath away. "Anakin," she whispers, her voice weak but filled with hope. "Your eyes, they're blue again." "I found my way back," he says simply, brushing a strand of hair from her face with his remaining hand. "My mother helped me remember who I used to be, who I still am, underneath everything that went wrong." Padmé's gaze shifts to where Shmi stands, watching over them, and her eyes widen with recognition and wonder. Though they never met in life, there is something unmistakably familiar about the older woman's features. Something that speaks of shared love for the same man. "Thank you," Padmé says, her voice thick with emotion, "for bringing him back to me, for giving us a chance to be a family. The choice to return was his, Shmi replies. I merely reminded him that love is always stronger than hatred, that hope can survive even the darkest night. But the real work, the work of healing, of redemption, of building a better future, that lies ahead of all of us. As if summoned by her words, the sound of ship engines fills the air around them. But this time, it is not the dark shuttle of a Sith Lord come to collect his apprentice. Instead, a small fleet of Republic vessels descends through Mustafar's chaotic atmosphere. Medical ships, rescue craft, and even a few Jedi starfighters, piloted by survivors of Order 66, who have sensed the shift in the Force and come to investigate. The next few hours pass in a blur of activity. Padme is rushed to the medical bay of the largest ship, where skilled doctors work to ensure that both she and her unborn children will survive the trauma of the day's events. Anakin, despite his own critical injuries, refuses to leave her side, drawing on reserves of strength that should not exist to remain conscious and coherent throughout the ordeal. The birth, when it finally comes, is both difficult and miraculous. Luke Skywalker enters the world first, his tiny lungs announcing his arrival with a healthy cry that echoes through the medical bay. His sister follows minutes later, quieter but no less alive, her small fingers grasping reflexively at the air, as if reaching for something just beyond her grasp. They're beautiful, Padme whispers, as the medical droids place the twins in her arms for the first time. Perfect and beautiful and safe. Anakin, propped up in a medical chair beside her bed, reaches out with his remaining hand to touch his son's tiny fingers. The moment of contact sends a wave of pure joy through him, a feeling so intense and overwhelming that it washes away the last lingering traces of dark side corruption in his spirit. Luke, he says softly, testing the name on his lips. Luke and Leia Skywalker. Leia Nabari Skywalker, Padme corrects gently. I want her to carry part of my heritage as well as yours. As they sit together, a family, at last, Shmi appears one final time. Her form is even more translucent now, as if the effort of healing Padme and ensuring the twins' safe arrival has drained the last of her spiritual energy. It is time for me to go, she says, her voice barely a whisper on the recycled air of the medical bay. My purpose here is complete. No, Anakin protests, reaching toward her with his good arm. Please don't leave me again. I've made so many mistakes, done so many terrible things. I need your guidance to help me make amends. You don't need me anymore, Ani, Shmi says with infinite love and pride. You have everything you need right here. A wife who loves you, children who will depend on you, friends who will stand by you, and most importantly, the knowledge that redemption is always possible for those who seek it with genuine hearts. She moves closer to the bed where her son sits with his new family, and for a moment her ethereal form seems to solidify enough for her to place a gentle kiss on his forehead. Remember, she whispers, her voice already beginning to fade. The light is always there, waiting for you to choose it. And love, true love, never dies. It only grows stronger. With those words, Shmi Skywalker fades away for the final time, leaving behind only the warmth of her blessing and the certainty that somewhere in the cosmic force that binds all things, she continues to watch over her family with infinite love and pride. The aftermath of Palpatine's death and Anakin's redemption reverberates throughout the galaxy in ways both profound and practical. The Empire, built around the personal power and charisma of a single man, begins to crumble almost immediately as regional governors, military commanders, and corporate interests scramble to fill the power vacuum left by the Emperor's demise. On Coruscant, the Imperial Senate, many of whose members had been coerced or manipulated into supporting Palpatine's agenda, quickly moves to restore the Republic and undo many of the more oppressive policies implemented during the transition to Imperial rule. The surviving Jedi, emerging from years of hiding and persecution, find themselves in the unexpected position of being welcomed back as heroes and protectors, rather than hunted as criminals. Anakin's own situation is more complicated. There is no denying the terrible crimes he committed during his time as Darth Vader. No way to simply erase the memory of his march on the Jedi Temple or his role in the destruction of Alderaan's sister worlds. But there is also no denying the sincerity of his redemption, the genuineness of his remorse, and the crucial role he played in ending Palpatine's reign of terror. After much debate and soul-searching, the Reformed Jedi Council reaches a decision that satisfies neither the desire for absolute justice nor the hope for complete forgiveness, but represents perhaps the best compromise possible under the circumstances. Anakin will not be punished for his crimes, but neither will he be restored to his former rank and privileges within the Order. Instead, he will spend the rest of his life working to atone for his actions through service to others, using his considerable skills and knowledge to help rebuild what his fall had helped to destroy. It is a sentence that Anakin accepts without complaint or protest. In the weeks and months that follow, he throws himself into the work of reconstruction with the same intensity he once brought to his training as a Jedi or his service as a general in the Republic military. He helps to coordinate relief efforts for worlds devastated by the Clone Wars, assists in the rehabilitation of former Imperial soldiers and officials, and works tirelessly to develop new technologies that can benefit the galaxy's most vulnerable populations. The twins, meanwhile, grow and develop in an environment radically different from the one that might have existed had their father not found his way back to the light. Luke shows early signs of Force sensitivity, delighting in making small objects float through the air or sensing the emotions of those around him. Leia, while perhaps less overtly powerful in the Force, demonstrates an intelligence and strength of will that suggests she will one day be a formidable leader in her own right. Both children grow up knowing the full truth about their father's past. Anakin and Padme make the difficult decision to be completely honest with them about the darkness he had embraced and the crimes he had committed, believing that the truth, however painful, is preferable to comfortable lies that might be discovered later. It is not an easy conversation to have, but both Luke and Leia seem to possess an innate understanding that their father's past mistakes do not define his present character or their future possibilities. Daddy made some very bad choices when he was younger. Padme explains to 4-year-old Leia during one of their regular talks about family history. He let his anger and fear control him, and he did things that hurt a lot of people. But he also made the choice to change, to become a better person. And that's why we're all here together now. Like when I get angry and hit Luke? Leia asks, her young mind trying to process the complex concepts of redemption and forgiveness. Similar, but much more serious, Padme says carefully. The important thing is that we all have the power to choose who we want to be every single day. We can choose to be kind or cruel, helpful or harmful, loving or hateful. And no matter what mistakes we've made in the past, we can always choose to do better in the future. It is a lesson that both children take to heart as they grow older, and it shapes their development in profound ways. Luke becomes known for his compassion and his willingness to see the good in everyone, while Leia develops into a fierce advocate for justice who never loses sight of the importance of mercy and forgiveness. As the years pass, the galaxy settles into a new equilibrium. The Republic, chastened by its near destruction at the hands of a Sith Lord, implements reforms designed to prevent such a catastrophe from occurring again. The Jedi Order, reduced to barely a dozen survivors, slowly begins to rebuild, but with a greater emphasis on humility and service rather than the detached aloofness that had characterized their pre-war attitude. Anakin ages, his hair turning gray, and his face acquiring the lines that come from years of hard work and genuine remorse. But there is a peace about him now that had been absent during his youth, a sense of having found his true purpose in life. He never fully forgives himself for what he did during his time as Darth Vader, but he learns to live with the guilt while still finding joy in the present and hope for the future. On quiet evenings, when the work of the day is done and the family gathers together in their modest home on Naboo, Anakin sometimes feels his mother's presence like a gentle warmth in his heart. He never sees her again, never hears her voice with his ears, but he knows with absolute certainty that she is watching over them all, proud of the man he has become and the legacy he is building for his children and their children after them. And sometimes, when Luke and Leia are playing in the garden and Padme is humming softly as she tends to her plants, Anakin allows himself to believe that this is what Shmi had always envisioned for him. Not glory or power or dominion over others, but simply the quiet happiness that comes from a life lived in service to love. The galaxy still faces challenges, still struggles with poverty and injustice and the scars left by decades of war. But now there is hope where once there was only despair, light where once there was only darkness, and at the center of it all stands a family that should never have existed. Proof that even the deepest fall can be followed by the most profound redemption, and that love, true, selfless, unconditional love, really can transcend death itself. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Obi-Wan, who has been watching this exchange in stunned silence, finally finds his voice. Anakin, she's right. It's not too late. Help us stop the Emperor. Help us restore justice to the galaxy. It won't erase what you've done, but it would be a beginning. But even as hope begins to flicker in Obi-Wan's heart, Anakin's expression hardens again. The dark side may be weakened by his mother's presence, but it has not been banished entirely. Years of anger and hatred cannot be undone by a single conversation, no matter how profound. Pretty words, Anakin says, trying to push himself up with his remaining arm. But where were you when I needed you? Where were the Jedi when my mother was suffering in slavery? Where was the Republic's justice when the Tusken Raiders were torturing innocent people for sport? We failed you, Obi-Wan admits freely. The Jedi failed you. The Republic failed you. I failed you. But that doesn't justify what you've become, doesn't it? Anakin asks bitterly. For 9 years, I was a slave. Then for another 13, I was a Jedi, which is just another kind of slavery. Following orders without question, suppressing my emotions, pretending not to care about the people I loved. Only when I embraced the dark side did I finally become free to act according to my own will. Free? Shmi asks, and there is profound sadness in her voice. Look around you, my son. Look at what your freedom has brought you. You lie broken and alone on a world of fire and death, having driven away everyone who ever cared about you. You serve a master who sees you as nothing more than a tool to be used and discarded. If this is freedom, then I fear for what slavery must look like. As if summoned by her words, the sound of ship engines fills the air above them. A dark shuttle descends through Mustafar's roiling atmosphere, its hull bearing the insignia of the newly formed Galactic Empire. Anakin recognizes the vessel immediately. It is his master's personal transport, come to collect him and complete his transformation into Darth Vader. He's here, Anakin says, and despite everything, there is still a note of reverence in his voice. When he speaks of the Emperor, my master, he'll know what to do. But Shmi shakes her head firmly. That man is not your master, Ani. He is your destroyer, the architect of every tragedy that has befallen you since you left Tatooine. Do you really think it was coincidence that brought you to his attention? Do you believe that your mother's capture and torture was merely bad luck? The implications of her words hit Anakin like a physical blow. He has always assumed that his mother's death was simply one of those terrible random events that plague the galaxy. A cruel twist of fate that no one could have prevented or predicted. But now, seeing the knowing look in his mother's eyes, he begins to understand the truth. He orchestrated it, Anakin says, his voice hollow with shock. Palpatine arranged for the Tusken Raiders to take you. He wanted me to fall to the dark side, so he killed you to make it happen. Not directly, Shmi says gently, but yes. He set the events in motion that led to my capture and death. Just as he manipulated the circumstances that brought you to Coruscant, just as he engineered the war that drove you to desperation, just as he planted the visions of Padme's death that finally broke your resistance to his influence. The shuttle has landed now, and armored figures begin to emerge from its boarding ramp. Clone troopers in white armor, their helmets bearing the insignia of the 501st Legion, Anakin's own men, turned against their former general by the activation of Order 66. Behind them comes a figure shrouded in a dark hooded cloak, his yellow eyes glowing with malevolent satisfaction. Lord Vader, Emperor Palpatine calls out as he approaches the collection arm where the three figures wait. His voice carries easily across the distance, amplified by the Force and by his own sense of theatrical drama. I sense you have been delayed in carrying out your orders. My master, Anakin says, trying once again to rise and failing. I have done as you commanded. The Separatist leadership is dead. Their forces scattered. The war is over. Yes, it is. Palpatine agrees, his gaze taking in the scene before him with obvious amusement. But I see you have encountered some complications. No matter. My medical droids will have you restored to full functionality within hours, and then we can begin the next phase of our plan. But even as the Emperor speaks, his attention is drawn to the figure kneeling beside his apprentice. Shmi Skywalker's presence in the Force is unlike anything he has encountered in decades of studying the dark arts, and for the first time in years, Darth Sidious feels a flicker of genuine uncertainty. "Impossible," he whispers, extending his senses to probe the nature of the apparition before him. "The dead do not return. I have studied every aspect of death and resurrection. This cannot be real. Can it not?" Shmi asks, rising gracefully to her feet and turning to face the Emperor. Though she is physically smaller and apparently defenseless, there is something about her that makes even the most powerful Sith Lord in galactic history take a step backward. "You have studied death, yes, but have you studied love? Have you learned the power that comes from absolute selflessness, from a willingness to sacrifice everything for another's well-being?" "Love is weakness," Palpatine snarls, his composure cracking for the first time in memory. "Attachment leads to jealousy. Jealousy leads to anger. Anger leads to hatred. And hatred gives us strength. Hatred gives you nothing but emptiness." Shmi replies calmly, "I have seen what lies beyond death, my lord. I have seen the true nature of the Force, and I tell you now that everything you believe is a lie. The dark side does not grant power. It steals it. It does not make you strong. It makes you a slave to your basest emotions. You think you have found immortality through evil, but all you have achieved is a living death." Palpatine's response is swift and brutal. Dark side lightning erupts from his fingertips, arcing across the collection arm with enough power to vaporize a living being instantly. But when the energy strikes Shmi, something extraordinary happens. Instead of destroying her, it seems to be absorbed into her very essence, making her appear even brighter and more substantial than before. "Your power cannot touch me," she says simply. "Not because I am beyond your reach, but because I have nothing left that you can take. You feed on fear, on anger, on the selfish desires that drive beings to darkness. But I am motivated by love alone, and love is the one force in the universe that your kind can never understand or control." The Emperor staggers backward, his yellow eyes wide with shock and rage. For over 1,000 years, the Sith have ruled through fear and intimidation, secure in their belief that the dark side represents the ultimate expression of power in the galaxy. But here stands a simple woman, a former slave with no training in the Force, who effortlessly turns aside his most devastating attack through nothing more than maternal love. "You think love makes you strong?" Palpatine asks, his voice taking on the silky tone he uses when trying to seduce potential apprentices. "Then why did you die? Why couldn't your love protect you from the Tusken Raiders who captured and tortured you? Why couldn't it save you from the slow, agonizing death that drove your son to embrace the darkness?" "Because love is not about avoiding pain," Shmi replies, her voice filled with infinite compassion. "It is about enduring pain willingly, about sacrificing yourself for the good of others. I died so that Anakin could live, just as every parent throughout history has been willing to give their life for their child. That is a kind of strength you will never possess, a power that no amount of Force lightning or political manipulation can match." As she speaks, Anakin finds himself remembering not just the day she died, but all the days that came before. He remembers her working endless hours in the junkyard to keep them both fed, never complaining about the back-breaking labor or the meager rewards. He remembers her staying up all night when he was sick, her cool hand on his forehead and her soft voice singing lullabies to chase away his nightmares. He remembers the way she smiled when he told her about his dreams of becoming a Jedi, how she encouraged his ambitions, even though it meant she would lose the only family she had ever known. Every memory is a testament to her love, her strength, her unwavering commitment to his happiness and well-being. And in that moment, Anakin finally understands what she has been trying to tell him, that true power comes not from the ability to dominate others, but from the willingness to serve them, not from taking whatever you want by force, but from giving freely of yourself for the benefit of those you love. "I see it now," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "I see what I became, what I threw away, the power I thought I needed. It was there all along, wasn't it? In your love, in Padme's love, in the bonds I shared with Obi-Wan and Ahsoka and everyone else I betrayed." "Yes," Shmi says simply. "But it is not too late, my son. The choices you have made cannot be undone, but new choices can still be made. You can still choose to be the man I raised you to be, the hero the galaxy needs you to become." Emperor Palpatine, who has been listening to this exchange with growing alarm, finally decides to act. He cannot allow his apprentice to be turned back to the light, cannot permit this woman's influence to undo years of careful manipulation and corruption. With a gesture, he summons his personal lightsaber to his hand and ignites the crimson blade, its glow casting sinister shadows across his weathered features. "Enough of this sentimentality," he snarls, raising the weapon threateningly. "Lord Vader belongs to me now. I have invested too much time and effort in his training to see it wasted on the maudlin delusions of a dead woman." But as he prepares to strike, something unexpected happens. Obi-Wan Kenobi, who has been standing in respectful silence throughout Shmi's conversation with her son, suddenly steps forward with his own lightsaber raised in defense. "You will not harm her," the Jedi Master says firmly, his blue blade creating a barrier between the Emperor and his target. "I don't pretend to understand what she is or how she's here, but I know good when I see it, and I will not stand by while evil tries to destroy it." Palpatine's laugh is like the sound of breaking glass. "Foolish Jedi, you think your pathetic skills can match the power of a Sith Lord? I have destroyed armies, toppled governments, manipulated entire species into destroying themselves. What possible threat could one aging Jedi represent?" The answer comes not from Obi-Wan, but from Anakin himself. Despite his injuries, despite the terrible damage inflicted by their earlier duel, he somehow finds the strength to push himself upright, to call his fallen lightsaber back to his hand, to ignite the blade that has served him throughout his fall to darkness. "You want to know what threat he represents?" Anakin asks, his voice growing stronger with each word. "He represents hope. He represents the possibility of redemption, the chance to make things right. And that terrifies you more than any weapon ever could." The crimson glow of Anakin's lightsaber begins to flicker and change, the red kyber crystal inside responding to the shift in his emotional state. Slowly, Impossibly, the blade begins to turn blue again, returning to the color it bore during his years as a Jedi Knight. "No," Palpatine whispers, backing away from the transformed weapon. "This is not possible. Once someone has fallen to the dark side, they cannot return. The power of the Sith is absolute, eternal, unchanging." "You're wrong," Anakin says, rising to his feet through sheer force of will. The stumps of his severed limbs send waves of agony through his nervous system, but he pushes through the pain, sustained by something more powerful than any drug or stimulant. The only thing that's absolute is love. The only thing that's eternal is hope. And the only thing that never changes is the possibility of choosing to do better. What follows is not so much a battle as a revelation. Palpatine, for all his power and cunning, has built his strength on foundations of hatred and fear. When confronted by the combined will of three individuals united by love and hope, his dark side abilities prove to be surprisingly fragile. Obi-Wan and Anakin fight side by side as they once did during the Clone Wars, their lightsabers moving in perfect harmony as they press their attack against the Emperor. But it is Shmi who delivers the killing blow, not with any weapon or force power, but simply by speaking a single word: forgiveness. The word hits Palpatine like a physical force, and he staggers backward with his hands pressed to his head, as if trying to block out an unbearable sound. For someone who has spent decades feeding on anger and hatred, who has built his entire identity around the concept of revenge, the idea of forgiveness is literally incomprehensible. It creates a cognitive dissonance so profound that it shakes the very foundations of his being. I don't understand," he gasps, his yellow eyes flickering between confusion and rage. "How can you forgive what cannot be forgiven? How can you love what deserves only hatred? Because that is what love means," Shmi replies gently. "It is not a reward for good behavior or a prize to be earned through worthiness. It simply is, constant and unconditional and stronger than death itself." And with those words, the Emperor's power finally breaks. The dark side energies that have sustained him for so many years suddenly abandon him, leaving behind nothing but a withered old man whose crimes finally catch up with him. He collapses to the metal decking of the collection arm, his body aging decades in the span of seconds as the unnatural forces that kept him alive finally fade away. Anakin looks down at the corpse of his former master, feeling not triumph, but a profound sadness for the wasted potential, the opportunities for good that were squandered in pursuit of power. Then he turns to his mother, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "What happens now?" he asks. "How do I make amends for everything I've done?" "One day at a time," Shmi says simply. "One choice at a time. You cannot undo the past, but you can choose to build a better future." She begins to fade as she speaks, her form becoming translucent as the Force prepares to reclaim her spirit. But before she disappears entirely, she looks one last time at her son, her expression filled with pride and love and infinite hope. "Remember, Ani," she says, her voice growing distant. "The light is always there, waiting for you to choose it. All you have to do is stop running from who you really are." And then she is gone, leaving behind only the memory of her words and the warmth of her blessing. The immediate aftermath is chaotic but hopeful. Obi-Wan uses the Emperor's shuttle to rush Padme to the nearest medical facility, while Anakin, his body broken but his spirit finally beginning to heal, holds her hand throughout the journey. The twins are born healthy, entering a galaxy that is suddenly full of possibility instead of despair. The political ramifications are enormous. With the Emperor dead and Darth Vader redeemed, the newly formed empire begins to crumble as systems revolt against Imperial rule. The surviving Jedi emerge from hiding to help rebuild the Republic, while Anakin, despite his crimes, becomes a powerful voice for justice and reconciliation. It is not an easy path. There are those who can never forgive him for what he did, who see his redemption as too little, too late. There are days when he doubts himself, when the weight of his guilt threatens to crush him entirely. But in those moments, he remembers his mother's words, remembers the love that transcended death itself, and finds the strength to continue. Luke and Leia grow up knowing both their parents, raised in a galaxy where hope has been restored, and where the mistakes of the past serve as lessons for building a better future. They learn about their father's fall and redemption not as distant history, but as a personal testament to the power of love and forgiveness. And sometimes, in quiet moments when the Force is particularly strong, Anakin feels his mother's presence again, not as a vision or apparition, but as a gentle warmth in his heart, a reminder that love truly is eternal, and that redemption is always possible for those brave enough to seek it. The galaxy still faces challenges, still struggles with the legacy of war and oppression. But now there is hope where once there was only despair, light where once there was only darkness. And at the center of it all stands a family reunited, proof that even the deepest fall can be followed by the most profound redemption. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.